Don't you just love the smell of books? Hey my friends, welcome back to my channel. This video is the first in a series titled My Favorite Things. I will be sharing some of my favorite things that I have discovered this month or things that I have rediscovered. In this first episode, I'm going to be talking about three things. The first is a book by V.E. Schwaab. It's actually a series titled Shades of Magic. The second is a movie, Jurassic Park. And the third is a podcast episode from Lewis Howes' School of Greatness. So let's talk about the Shades of Magic series by V.E. Schwaab. Don't you just love the smell of books? So essentially, there are four Londons. There is Grey London, Black London, White London, and Red London. And they all exist at the same time, but in parallel worlds. And the only thing that kind of differentiates them from each other is their relationship with magic. Red London is full of magic. It is everywhere that you go. It's in all the things that you see. Grey London has no magic whatsoever. I have to admit that when I first read this summary, I thought, this is crazy. How can this world possibly exist? But this is actually one of the greatest strengths of V.E. Schwaab and something that pulled me into this series right from the get-go. She is fantastic at world building, and halfway through the first book, which is A Darker Shade of Magic, I was totally sold on the idea. There are characters that we are introduced to in the first book. The first one being Kel. Kel is a blood magician, also known as an Antari, and he has this special ability to create doors between each of the Londons. And he's also essentially the only person who can create such a portal, and he's also the only one that can travel through these portals. And we start the story with Kel traveling to this one tavern in Grey London, and that's where we meet Lila Bard. I think Lila Bard is one of the best female characters that I have come across in a fantasy series. She is a pickpocket, she is a thief, but there is so much depth to her character. For one, she has not let her situation kind of define her. She is unapologetically herself, and she's just an all-around badass. So Kel visiting Grey London, he visits his tavern and he meets Lila. At the same time, something is brewing in White London because they're trying to regain a sense of power, and they have their own Antari, their own blood magician, who visits Grey London at the same time that Kel meets Lila, and that he's up to no good, and things happen, and then, you know, the whole thing takes off from there. One thing I love about the series is that it kind of moves between being character driven and plot driven, and then being everything driven. So the first one, which is A Darker Shade of Magic, it's actually very much plot driven, and you're kind of taken through this massive adventure. Whereas the second one, which is A Gathering of Shadows, it is more character driven, and you get to really know what is going on, you know, within the mindset of each character. You get to know a little bit about their backstory and also their journey. And then you come to the third book, which is The Conjuring of Light, and it is a place where everything comes together. It's very exciting, and I love this series. And I don't want to say more because I don't want to spoil the journey for you, but I highly recommend it. The second favorite thing that I want to talk to you about is the movie Jurassic Park. I am a sci-fi nerd, and this is by far one of my favorite science fiction films. I have watched it many times. So the movie is based on the book Jurassic Park, written by Michael Crichton. The film came out in 1993. It's directed by Steven Spielberg. The story revolves around John Hammond, who is the CEO of a corporation called InGen, and he decides to bring dinosaurs to life and create a kind of theme park. Now, during the transport of one of the velociraptors, a member of staff gets attacked. And then what happens is that the investors who have put a lot of money into this park get a little bit worried, and they say, hey, we're not quite sure if we want this park to open, and we're not sure if we want to keep giving you money. And as a solution to this problem, John Hammond then gets a team of experts together, sends them on this journey into the theme park to assess whether it's safe. But of course, it doesn't really work out like that. So you've got two cars, you've got groups of people heading out into the theme park, and then a storm hits, things start malfunctioning, and, you know, chaos kind of ensues. So things that I love about this film: I am a dino nerd, so I love all movies that have to do with dinosaurs. That's kind of the first thing. Incredible cast. Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, Richard Attenborough. They all deliver fantastic performances. They pull you in, they make it convincing. Also, I don't think there are many directors who can create suspense just like Steven Spielberg can. Spoiler alert. I have watched this so many times, but every time I come to that scene where the Jeeps break down in front of the T-Rex paddock and things are not really looking great, there's a storm, Steven Spielberg is just incredible at just kind of adding layer upon layer and playing with everything he's got. He uses the weather, the environment, the cast, he uses silence, and he plays with all these things, and it kind of comes together in this incredible experience for the audience. You feel like you are sitting in that Jeep with them and, you know, just afraid that this T-Rex is gonna pop out at any minute. Another thing I love about this film is the role that is played by Samuel L. Jackson. So this movie came out in 1993, and Samuel L. Jackson's first breakout role was in Pulp Fiction, which came out 1 year later in 1994. But I think it's so interesting to watch characters, or to watch actors in these kind of small roles or cameo roles before they had their breakout success, because I personally love knowing about the process, and when I see them in these roles, you know, it's kind of a testament to how hard they've been working, how long they've been in the game, and it just kind of reminds us that, hey, no one is an overnight success. Everybody started somewhere and they did the best they could, and you know, they just trusted the process, and eventually they got their big break. I know that a lot of people may disagree with this because, you know, it's science fiction and hey, it doesn't go that deep. However, I do feel that one of the underlying themes in this movie is about this broader discussion of human beings and their need to experiment with nature. And just because we can experiment, it does not necessarily mean that we should. So in the movie, one of the things that kind of concerns this group when they talk to Hammond is how will he control the breeding, and how will he make sure that these dinosaurs will just not multiply by themselves and then cause chaos in the park. And so one of Hammond's scientists then responds by saying that they have controlled the genetics and manipulated the DNA so they only have female dinosaurs. And I love this scene because Jeff Goldblum just, you know, has a little spiel about how this is just not going to be something that you can control.
You're implying that a group composed entirely of female animals will breed?
No, I'm simply saying that life finds a way.
We are switching gears for the third thing now, and I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite podcasts that I have discovered over the last few weeks. That's a podcast by Lewis Howes, The School of Greatness. In particular, I want to talk about this episode that I listened to with Lily Singh and the takeaways and the learning. The fact that the most important relationship that you will ever have is the one that you have with yourself. I was raised in an environment where, you know, things like achievements, accolades, awards, test scores, those were the things that kind of measured her success. And then she also tied her relationship to herself and her value of herself to these things. And if she didn't do well in those things on the outside, then things on the inside also did not work so well. She talks about the fact that you've got to find a way to kind of disconnect from these things, even though you want them in your life, even though you are striving and hustling and doing all those things, you've still got to find a way to derive value and find worth in other things. She gives the example of where she goes to meet a friend and, you know, she spends an evening with them and they have a really deep, meaningful conversation over dinner, and she, you know, enjoys that time that she spends with the friend. And then she leaves their house and she thinks, hey, you know, I spent a wonderful evening with my friend and that has value in it. The other really big takeaway is also what she talks about when it comes to giving labels or assigning labels to ourselves. What she says is that, you know, as human beings, we feel a range of emotions, and we are also going through a spectrum of experiences. So for example, maybe you're really hardworking, maybe you've been in a field that you've been really successful at because you've been practicing that for 10 years. So for example, you know, you're an accountant for 10 years and now you are an expert in that field, and you tell yourself, I'm a hard worker, I'm successful, I'm an expert in this, and then you decide to learn something new, say for example calligraphy, and this is, you know, very different from your field of expertise, or it's just something completely new. But you cannot take the label that I can do everything right to an experience where you're learning something new, because there the context is completely different. You just need to simplify things and just maybe say something like, I'm a human just experiencing something new, I am learning something new, and I'm going to give myself the grace and time to figure it out as I go. And that kind of switches things in your mind, and it gives you a different lens in which to kind of view things. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this series. I hope you enjoyed getting to know me just a little bit more outside the dance world. If you enjoyed this video, I think you are going to enjoy this one right over here. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and I will hopefully see you in the next one. Bye.